Well, hello there, and welcome back to another Friday night for another edition of Not Your Average Globetrotter. I am Rafael di Furia, and this week, you may notice that I'm in a little bit of a different location and with a guest, Mike Corradi.
Hello, everyone.
Welcome, man. How you doing?
Thank you very much. I'm doing very well. Thank you.
Thanks for being a part of this. We just finished recording a couple episodes of the Italian Citizenship podcast, and
which was fun, which was great. Thank you very much for that.
Yeah. Oh, of course. Thank you for making yourself available for that. It was, I mean, my mind is literally like so much information. You're just a wealth of knowledge. If you haven't seen those episodes yet, I highly recommend them. Even if you are not interested in Italian citizenship at all, the historical information, the context, everything in there, absolutely fantastic. And that's actually why we're in this room today. But I wanted to bring you over to my personal project, Not Your Average Globetrotter, because you have an interesting connection with Italy. You've lived here for the majority of your life, but you also actually are a dual citizen, but Italian and British.
Yes, exactly.
And so I wanted to talk to you because of your experience as that dual citizen, most of your life here, and how things kind of culturally have fit for you. So I guess a place for us to start maybe is just, who are you? Like, what do people need to know about you that makes you you? Like, maybe to talk a little bit about, just in brief, like your childhood, and then also a little bit about your podcast.
Well, that's a very dangerous question, because now I'm going to have to sit here for a bit and think about who I actually am.
This man.
So identity crisis. He makes you sort of wandering off with my mind. No, but actually, who you are, I always remember, because I'm actually an English teacher, which is not who I am. So that's first thing. My profession is not who I am. But I always remember that I'd seen in a book, there was a very lovely section in which there was a guy identifying himself through pictures. So, you know, the first picture he was with his child, and in the second picture he was at work. And so if you're going to say who I am, I would say I'm a dad. I'm the father of Eddie and Lucy. I am the husband of Agnese. I am an English teacher. I am the son of an Italian with an odd name, Ariello Rolando Corradi, who hails from the Emilia area of the Emilia-Romagna region, son also of Janet Smith of the more common Smith clan of Great Britain. I was born here in Italy in the Piedmont region, actually. So Piedmontese, if you will, by birth. When I was very young, when I was 6 years old, the whole family moved to the UK. We lived near Watford, near sort of northwest of London. Then we moved to the United States, and I had a lovely, lovely time in beautiful Virginia, in Pulaski County, Virginia. And then
picked up that accent.
I did for a while. My mum was none too pleased about that.
I can only imagine.
I love the Southern accent. And there's certain television programs I actually watch only just to hear that accent. So it's very nostalgic. And so then when I was 14 years old, we came back to Italy, and here I am still in Italy, in the city of Reggio Emilia, as an English teacher and a part-time podcaster as well. So,
well, I think that gives us a great insight to who this man is that we're talking to, and to give a little insight, because being a dual citizen, being raised in Italy and other countries as well, having lived in the UK, the US, and Italy, gives you a different kind of insight and outlook, I should say, on the world. And
absolutely, yeah.
We were talking about this earlier, but do you feel a pull or a tie more towards one country or the other, or do you really feel that you are more of a third culture kid?
Yeah, I would say I definitely feel more of a third culture kid. Up until Brexit, I would have said European if I wanted to identify myself, because I feel more affinity with British culture, French culture, German culture, Italian culture, than maybe with American culture. Not that I don't like, because I adored living in America. I still have great friends. But in the sense of, who would I identify more with? I would identify more with European culture. But, after Brexit, Farage and company kind of said, well, no, you're not really European. So I said, okay. And I think, there are pros and cons. I would say the pros outweigh the cons, definitely. The cons are sort of a lack of belonging. I mean, there will always be a conversation that somebody in some country is having about some cultural aspect you're not a part of. a silly example could be cartoons. You know, the other evening, my wife and our friends, we were having a conversation. Oh, do you remember that cartoon? And I was like, no.
Right.
And my wife's like, oh yeah, you weren't here.
Yeah, I've had that exact same experience.
Exactly. And so that's kind of the con, you know, lack of belonging. At the same time, like you were saying, Rafael, the pros, you know, it's impossible to have a closed mentality. You know, when you've been brought up in such different cultures, you know and accept that things are thought of and done differently in other countries in different ways. And so then you'll be more accepting and open to a third or fourth culture, I think. And so, again, you know, the pros definitely outweighs the cons in that sense. Although, you know, sometimes you will think, oh, I wish, you know, I felt like part of that group or that group, because as human beings, we have this need to be
part of a tribe.
Exactly, part of a tribe. But, you know, like you said, the third culture tribe is you know,
it's growing. I mean, it's. I also have this feeling because it's like I'm American kind of by default. It's like I was born there. My mother is American. It's definitely a part of who I am. But is it me?
Exactly. And there it comes to the definition of what culture means. You know, what is culture? Is it birth? Is it geography? Is it language? Is it education? You know, what aspect of culture? You know, what makes an Italian person Italian? What makes a British person British? You know, is it the accent? Is there a knowledge of Monty Python? Do you have to know, you know, do you have to know the Holy Grail by heart? In which case, yes, you can be a British citizen. Otherwise, you know, do you have to drink a certain amount of beer per year?
Is Guinness required? Is it proper? Is it improper?
Guinness British? I don't know if it's...
No, it's not. I mean, clearly it's not. It's not British. But, like, I mean, still, like, there are those little things that you grow up with, as you were mentioning, even cartoons. I've had this, even when dating, this has become, like, kind of just one of those little things that I've noticed. Not that it's specifically cartoons, but the things that you grow up with, part of those things that you look back on that were part of your childhood, it can be difficult to relate to not to someone, but to relate to that aspect of someone and to have that shared experience. Because, of course, going, like you were saying, like when we have those shared experiences, that's one way of connecting with another person. But I'm curious, though, because your wife is Italian.
Exactly, yeah.
So do you ever feel like beyond just the cartoons that there are little cultural things that maybe were an influence from your mother that going through day-to-day life that you have tendencies to move in one direction, she might have to move in another?
Yes. At the same time, you know, we've been married now for almost 20 years, so there's been a lot of overlap as well. Just to give you one example, the first time I took my wife to an Indian restaurant in the UK, she's always been very polite. We were with my aunt and uncle. She had to excuse herself to go to the bathroom and vomit. Oh no. Because she was just not used to all these spices and all this different kind of food. You know, she was used to very traditional, very standard, simple ingredient Italian food. But now she adores it. You know, if we have to choose where to go, she's the first to stand up and say, no, let's go to an ethnic restaurant somewhere. So there's been this cross-cultural aspect. I've become, I mean, house care is another issue. You know, in Italy, your house has to be pristine, it has to look nice, it has to be clean, etc., etc. I've done a lot of work on improving that aspect. You know, not saying that, you know,
you're a man. You gotta have your mess.
Yeah, but not so much. You know, that you know. Again, I don't want to generalize, but there's a lot more care about sort of tidiness and cleanliness in Italy than maybe in other cultures. So it's kind of a cross-pollination, I think. Although there are some aspects. I think another thing is health, because like in Italy, air conditioning is death.
Right.
I mean, if you sit in front of an air conditioner in Italy, you're going to die. Right? Yeah. And you're like, well, you know, it's just cold air, you know, but okay, you know, and then you go along with it, or, you know,
or
sit
even
near
the heater
a draft.
in the winter. Like, you have to be careful about using the heat for the same logic.
Exactly. Like, and one thing you should never do in Italy is you can't sweat. Sweat is prohibited. Oh, no, I'm not going to do that because you know, I'll offer in this period, we've had tradesmen come into the house, you know, plumbers, etc., because we've moved and would you like a glass of water? Oh, no, I'll sweat. And, you know, I'm thinking, well, that's what your body does to cool down, but no problem.
Wow, I've never heard that one before.
Yeah, like sweating. Don't, you know, you say to children, oh, don't sweat. The kids like, you know, running around 5 years old. Okay.
I can't help it, Mama.
So yeah, there are various little bits and bobs, but I think that they become, you know, more fun than actual points of friction, if you will.
Yeah, no, I mean, like looking back, I've said this a million times, like about like growing up, like if I came out of the shower with my hair wet, I mean, my hair was a lot shorter then, but well, at least it was shorter here. I had a little bit more up there. That's a different story though.
Yes, let's not talk about that. Because
no, don't get me started. Anyway, my grandfather, if I came out of the shower with wet hair, he flipped. Yeah. Not that he was angry, but he was like concerned. He was genuinely concerned for my health, that I might get sick, that I might get a chill. And he would say, "Go get the towel," and like he shaked, rattled, and rolled that little head until it was completely dry. It's those little things that we end up kind of having as an influence.
Having said this, again, you know, if it hadn't been for my wife, probably, you know, me and my 2 children would probably be dead by now. You know, like for me, it was like, yeah, you know, whatever, they're fine. You know? So whereas maybe it was something that needed care, and that's why, you know, interestingly, there's, I think, between the UK and Italy, there's a totally different ratio between number of inhabitants and number of doctors. A lot higher ratio of you know, there's a lot less doctors per number of inhabitants in the UK. You know, medical practitioners.
I mean, well, in Italy in general, there's a lot of very highly educated people. So much so that it's actually probably one of the contributing factors to why there's such I mean, okay, it's not just this, but why there's so many people that are out of work now and they end up going to other countries because
that's cool.
Like
in Italian, there's la fuga dei cervelli, you know, the brain, how would I say, the brain drain. Exodus, brain drain,
it's
which is a shame because,
absolutely.
You know, that's one of the problems in Italy. I mean, again, you know, you were asking why you would want to remain, and at the moment, I'm very happy remaining in Italy, but I think that if things continue to go the way they go, i.e. the Italian establishment, the Italian political organization not investing in the future and sort of working year by year, month by month, I think the situation will be worse. So I can see myself retiring and being happy in Italy, but I can't see my children living all of their lives in Italy, for example.
I can understand that. I mean, it's something that, I mean, not that I have thought about children, but it's like, it's an idea that's like, okay, what if that were to happen? Like, what would I want for them? And seeing what's going on here, like, I can understand why so many people leave. There's so many people that want to come to Italy. Oh, how do I get a job? Oh, can I get a job? Do I need to know Italian to get a job? All these different things. But there's the very first factor, which so many people forget. Why are there so many people leaving the country?
Yeah, exactly.
So many young people, so many highly educated people. And it's not just for a simple reason. It's really a culmination of reasons, like I was saying before. But to get, I guess, a little bit further into it, something that we were also talking before, which you just touched on, you about staying in Italy. Why is it that you choose to remain here and keep it your home? Because you do have that dual citizenship. You're not like most Italians, where the option to go to England, for example, expired at the end of 2020. You have the option to basically go there as you please, whenever you would like. Is there a reason why you prefer to call Italy your home, at least at this point in your life?
Well, mostly laziness, I would say.
Ain't nothing wrong with that.
In the sense that, you know, we have everything we need here, house, job. Right. Yeah, I think it's not so much. That's the first part. So the first part is not so much Italy itself, but the comfort of having a home, of having a steady job, having children that are well inserted in their local network of friends, of organizations, sports organizations, etc., in a good, also, you know, having them in a good situation, you know, no alcohol or drug use in their groups of friends, etc.
Really fantastic.
So, I mean, we're in a pretty good place, I would say. And I think that's one of the things that would possibly push anyone to move from one place to anywhere else, in the sense that I think if you feel that desire to move, there's got to be something where you are that's pushing you away.
Of course.
And at the moment, I really don't feel that in Italy. We had a moment a while back where work was not so brilliant, so we were seriously thinking of moving to the UK. We were looking into it. We'd made some plans, etc. But then, so the window of opportunity closed. My son started his high school, because in Italy, You don't go to a general high school and then choose your various courses, but you choose the kind of high school you go to. So you have these kids, 14-year-old, that are having to choose, their future
Medicine,
at 14, which is not as bad as Japan, where you have to choose the right nursery school to get to the right university. But
it's a big thing here that people also don't realize, like that you like even to go into hospitality, like you go to and you choose this not in university, you start that track
at 14 years old. When you finish what in the United States they call middle school. So when you're 14, you have to make that choice. You do have some workarounds, which are sort of more generic, technical, or liceo, which is like a more academic high school, if you will. But you have to, at 14, you have to sort of have an idea of where you want to go when you're 18 or 19, because in Italy there are 5 years of high school rather than 4, like in the UK or in the United States, for example. So I would say the lack of a reason to go elsewhere. Climate, it's lovely and sunny, a bit too muggy because we're in the Po Valley here. So
you get some of the the similar kind of humidity that
we get here in Rovigo. Food, obviously.
Can't complain about that.
And I was saying before, one of the things I always used to miss about the UK was the beer. I miss going into a proper English pub, having a pint of English ale. Yeah. And here now, in the last, I'd say 15 years, the Italians have started making beer. And when the Italians start to make food or drink, they do a damn good job of it.
And better than anybody else.
Exactly. And so you have all this array of amazing beers now, IPAs, red ales, all different kinds of things. You have the first kind of chain pubs coming out, which is something more of a common, rather than just the local things.
Interesting.
And so I'm not even missing the beer now. So
interesting. No, because that's something about England that I really enjoy is pub culture, and just how it's like, literally public house. Like it's a place where people.
Well,
come.
The pub is to England what the piazza and the bar is to Italy, basically.
Very fair statement.
It's two in one,
Very fair statement. That's the thing. Here in Italy, you'll go to the piazza and be at the bar, the cafe, whatever it is, and you'll have kids playing out until like 2 a.m. sometimes. If it's like a holiday, normal evening, maybe 10, 11. If it's a Friday, Saturday night, midnight easily. It's a completely different way of life. And, especially because of the weather, like you were mentioning, like it's possible. Not only possible, but it's practical because apartments get so hot and so little interest in air conditioning.
Yes,
but
although it's changed in recent. Due
of course.
to the general tragedy, which is climate change. The air conditioning has become a must also in Italian culture now. So.
Even when you go,
despite the death that it represents,
it's going to kill you, but it feels nice.
You'll feel good as when you're slowly dying.
Absolutely. Look, when you go to, say, like Media World or electronics shops and so on, now you're seeing like these growing air conditioning sections. You get the built-in one or the one, the mobile one that you can move around, that you just stick the tube out the window. It's really surprising. Even on Facebook groups, I do see Italians starting to talk about like what type of air conditioning, and like people are learning and wanting to get a better idea of that. But getting back to this living in Italy from your experience, like in your growing up, how was that for you? Did you feel like you were the British kid, the foreign kid, or because your father was from here, did you feel a tie to the country and not necessarily get treated as that other kid?
Well, I think I was always quite lucky because I sort of instinctively ran with the right crowd. I was never among the cool kids, but I was also never the ones that got bullied or anything. I had like a few choice friends, and I like we were talking about accents before. So for example, when I lived in Virginia, within a couple of months of moving to Virginia, I was kind of talking with a Virginian accent, and my mom was just out of her mind because she's a terrible accent for her, but and
you do it so naturally.
I blended in relatively quickly, and the let's say the foreign element was more my father, but he was very much loved by the community, and so he became like the eccentric, friendly uncle of the because he was like our soccer coach, our football coach. And I remember that one time because we're talking Virginia, early sort of mid 80s, so one word you could never say was hell. It was, that was absolutely prohibited,
Huh.
So, and I remember one time we were playing and he came out and I think he was talking to me. He said, Michael, Italian style father shouting,
yeah.
Michael, what the hell are you doing? And the whole field just froze. Every player, every parent, the referee, bug-eyed, looking at my father. Referee throws him off of the pitch.
No.
He's the coach. And so my dad, what does he do? He goes out to the parking lot, stands on his car and shouts instructions from the parking lot. So, he did these kind of things. And so he became well known in the community of the parents, etc. So we were kind of, this funny family. So no, I enjoyed Virginia very much. Then here in Italy, and that's something that, Globetrotter, and then for your other podcasts, I think it's important to know, there's a lot of, or at least there was until recently, a lot of, how can we say, xenophilia, in the sense Italians love Americans. And,
I would argue that it's not something that's necessarily disappeared. Okay, maybe I think it depends on what group of people you might fit into.
Yeah.
Because I've definitely experienced things where it's like, oh, you're American.
Wow. Cool, yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
And then you're the toy that kind of gets like, all right, you lose your charm. Not your charm, but you lose, I can never remember the word, but you're not exciting anymore because they got that already. Okay, sorry, I interrupted you.
American guy,
he comes here all the time.
No, but I mean, here in Italy, I've always felt that, that, oh, wow, so you're cool, people wanting to know. And so, I think it's just blind luck. In Italian, it's like culo. Just pure luck, or just such a lucky situation. So, like I said before, pros and cons. I've never felt ostracized anywhere. In all of my 40 years of life, I think I've only ever heard one joke about, me being different, and it was actually quite funny. So, I think it was something about, if you see, if you see an oil slick in the sea, what is it, an oil slick, or does it have like a bunch of Italians gone swimming or something like that? It was terrible joke.
Horrible. I've heard that one before.
Yeah. And I don't know, it didn't, I suppose because I never really let it faze me, so that then whoever said it just really didn't continue with it, because it was like, so,
big deal. You can take some. I've got some here.
Useful.
But growing up, though, I'm also curious, to kind of take it back a little bit. What was the language at home? Because I know there are a lot of parents who are thinking about moving to Italy with their kids. Some of them are in this similar position to you. One parent is Italian, one parent is American, or British, or whatever, or this or that. Or sometimes it even could be two Italian parents who've been living abroad, like say in Los Angeles or Japan, wherever, and they want to come back. What was the language situation in your household? Did you speak English? Did you speak Italian? A mix of the two? How did that work?
Well, the language at home was always English for us. Even when we were in Italy, the first 6 years of my life, my primary caretaker was my mother. So it was mainly English. My father had a job where he traveled a lot. And so, no, it's always been English. Indeed, when we returned to Italy, and I was 14 and my sister at the time was 9, we had quite a bit of difficulty getting back into the system because, I had to start high school without a strong base of Italian. I could speak and understand Italian, but I couldn't write it very well, all the double letters and all that complicated stuff, the verb tenses, I mean, one of the first times I went to school, people were saying to me, when you talk to the professor, devi dare del lei, you have to refer to them in the third person. Like, oh, professor, where, I wouldn't even know how to translate it, in English, thou, thee, or something like that. Yeah. I said, what do I have to do? And conditionals and conjunctives are a bit confusing. But if we wanted to give a suggestion, let's say, to people thinking about growing up bilingual children, first of all, there's a lot of literature. So, read up on what the expert... I think there's one which is called Growing Up with Two Languages, which is pretty good in that sense. I mean, I think the first thing I would say is you can't really do any permanent damage whatever you try. I mean, the worst case scenario, the kid is going to talk later than others. So, for example, both of my children spoke later than, 2 and a bit rather than maybe 1 and a bit. But they both started speaking a bit of both languages. Another thing, again, if you want to take it seriously, is ideally you would want to have one parent identified with one language. So I don't know, the mother speaking Italian and the father speaking English, or vice versa, or whatever, or in any other language, Arabic or Russian, or whatever language is the case. Consistency obviously is key. So, ideally you would want to, if you're going to speak in English, you always speak in English, or in Italian or in Italian. But then again, if you just want to set up like a play moment where, okay, today's Friday evening, let's do an English game, or cartoons on Thursday afternoon are all in English. There's lots of strategies you can apply from a linguistic point of view. And I don't think there's a lot that, you're not going to mess up their brain if you try and experiment with languages, because humans adapt and they'll be able to.
Especially young children.
Especially young children, exactly. They're so flexible at that age. I mean, there's a legend that children will learn better than adults, which is a legend because, I can say to you, Rafael, please, learn this page of grammar for next week. And you say, okay, if I have to, and you do it. If you tell a kid, learn this page of grammar for next week, they say, what?
Right.
So at the same time, they don't have the linguistic barriers that maybe a monolingual child would have. So they will accept that, they will accept sounds that in their native language don't exist, for example.
Uh-huh. So when you speak with your kids, I take it that you only speak with
only English.
And do they feel comfortable as Italians speaking English at home?
Yeah, going back to where we were before, they have this sort of star status. They're the English kids, so they're the cool ones. They can speak English, and which is very sad from another point of view, because it goes back to the question of elitist immigration. And the fact that an American or a British person in Italy is an expat
versus an immigrant.
Whereas an immigrant, why is an Albanian or maybe you have these people, these kids, these Slavic kids who speak perfect 4 or 5 languages perfectly, and they're an immigrant, and we speak Albanian. Which is a fascinating language, really, and so that's a shame in that sense. But my kids. There's
a difference of kind of how it's. I mean, look, it definitely comes from. Expat is very much a British term that Americans only more recently, I would say even within maybe the past 10 years, I've started hearing more Americans using it. I know when I first left America 12 years ago, that was the first time I ever heard the term expat. To expatriate as a verb, I'd heard that before, but I thought about it more as a formal thing rather than like a
legal procedure.
Exactly. Or but that was the thing, with the British kind of mentality towards pushing towards it, not pushing towards it, but kind of creating this idea and allowing these expat bubbles to exist where that you can go to the southern coast of Spain and you feel like you're in England, or
Algarve in Portugal, or Kantishire, which is the other name for Tuscany.
No. Oh goodness. But I'm curious, because I know there are times when I get treated, because I'm American, you kind of alluded to this, not this elitist, but kind of people want you because they think that maybe you have something, because you are this expat. You must be the wealthy American, the wealthy Brit, the wealthy this or that. Did you ever face that when dating as a young guy, before you got married? Or is that something that even your kids face, that because they assume that they're British, that maybe they're a little bit better off than the Italian kids, maybe for...
No, I don't think... I think it's genuine curiosity a lot of the time, not also, we live in Emilia, which is generally a very wealthy area. So most of the people I meet are better off than I am. So no, not that. I didn't do a lot of dating before getting married either. But no, there is a genuine interest, I think, in the story of somebody who's had a different life experience, who's traveled, who's been abroad, etc., rather than a feeling of, what can I gain from this person. No, I don't feel I've ever been sort of, also my children. I mean, the worst thing is people will come to you for help with their English homework, which I'm quite happy to. I mean, I remember at school, I used to do every English test. I used to do it twice, because I do one version for myself and one version just to circulate.
Please tell me you made some money that way.
No, I didn't.
Wasted opportunity. Just tease it. No, but that's interesting, because I've had a very different experience where being American and very clearly American, whereas you definitely can pass more as Italian. You speak the language perfectly. I'm not saying that this has only happened to me here, but I've had that situation where it's passport hunters or
okay.
those kinds of things where it's like interest in my documents rather than me, who I am.
I suppose it depends also what age you're dating at. Because I, as an adult, in reality, I got together with my wife when I was about 24. So I think, that, again, just off the top of my head, I have no idea because I wouldn't even remember how to date. But I would imagine that some sort of kicks in later in life, I think, when you're sort of finding... I
think it could be possible. I mean, I can say I've had that from very early on, like like 18, 19. I'm not disagreeing because the thing is that was your experience. So I'm not
exactly,
I'm not discounting
which
your
is
experience.
which is non-existent. So I think your experience.
No, and I'm not saying I've got tons of experience either, but I think it is interesting to be able to compare and contrast that we have had very different experiences living abroad. Well, even what is living abroad? Because we're both citizens by birth. Your citizenship is and tie to Italy is much closer than mine. So it's like you're here at home, but you're also in a sense living abroad because you do have a mentality that isn't just simply Italian, that there is that British influence on your life.
Yeah, I'm more of an Italian that's just spent loads of time abroad, really.
It's interesting. I can see what you're saying, kind of from your personality, the way you carry yourself. But I mean, also when you speak English, very clearly, there's a certain sound that comes out. There's a certain accent that comes out. And when you've, in all of this time, have you ever found that, where am I going with this?
Have you ever found that you get lost in thought and lose your train of thought? Yes, often happens.
But have you ever found that beyond accent, do you find it difficult to ever separate the languages in your own head and to be able to communicate? Do you have difficulty when communicating with people? Because something that I've realized as life has gone on more and more abroad, for me personally, I don't know how it is for you, but sometimes I find it difficult because I've used more parts of one language in one area than I have other parts of another language, like certain fruits and vegetables and things like that come to me more naturally than they do in English, in another language. I don't know. Have you ever experienced anything like that?
Well, I think you sort of alluded to it there, the area issue. The Holy Roman Emperor, was it Charles V, I think, said, I don't remember the exact sequence, but, I speak to my lovers in French or Italian. I give orders in German and so on and so forth. So different languages for different functions, I think. So there are certain things that I can talk about more comfortably in one language rather than another. My wife sometimes complains that when I tell my children off, I sometimes switch to Italian. But it's just so colorful Italian. You got these, expressions like basta. Basta, you can easily translate like stop, that's enough. But it's all rolled into one. It's like stop enough. You need a paragraph
to give all of the emotion behind it.
Exactly, and Italian being more emotional. But, another question that people often ask me is, what language do you dream in? And, I often say, well, it depends what I'm dreaming about. If I'm dreaming about talking to my wife or going to somewhere in Italy, I'll dream in Italian and vice versa. If I'm dreaming about something English, I'll dream in English. So, no, I think difficulty separating, not really. Aside from, what I saw is, going back to the question of educating bilingual children, is at the beginning, the difficulty is understanding that there are two different codes for the child. So like when my children started speaking, every object around them had one label. So maybe book was book, but table was tavolo. And then that developed, and eventually they understood that book was book and libro, and tavolo was tavolo and table. Okay.
I see.
But the first phase, there was a single single label for everything. So that's where I saw a bit of confusion in the two languages. But I've never felt it myself, let's say.
I'm curious.
Although we have in our family, and my sister is interesting, she actually did her university dissertation on this. As a family, when I lived, in my original family, let's say, my mother and father and my sister, we had created a separate little section of language that worked well for us because we knew both languages. So, for example, if you say in English, put it on the table, there's the verb to put. But in Italian, we have this lovely verb, which is appoggiare, which is like put it, but lay it, make sure it stays. It's got a lot more of a connotation. So, the verb in English was poggi. Podge it on the table, or there'll be some other concepts that are a bit more difficult, like rogito. Rogito is the signing of a deed that you do when you buy and sell a home. So what would you say in English? That's the signing of a deed when you, and in Italian it's one word. So, you know, I was talking to my mother the other day because we have to buy a house, and I said, okay, we've got the Rogito on the X day of September, and I use the Italian word for that. So there are,
I do the same thing with my mother. Like we have like these words that we mix together, and then like there have been days or even sentences where we switch between 5 languages. It's like, just because there's sometimes in English you can't get the point across. And
it shows, actually interestingly, that shows you something about culture as well. So one thing which is a bit critical about the Italian language, for example, is there is no word in Italian for accountability.
Really?
What do you say in Italian? Responsabilità? No, that's responsibility.
Accountability.
Contabilità means accounting, you know, the counting of money. So what does that tell you? You have a culture in which the idea in which somebody can be identified as being responsible for something doesn't exist. You know, and that's very deeply rooted in Italian culture, especially in the, I don't want to generalize, but especially in the state employee culture. So to give you another example, I did a course, an English course in a school. So the person responsible was a state employee. And I wanted to do the last lesson in a pizzeria, right? Because, you know, we're finishing the course. Let's go. Let's do it. I said, oh, no. But we don't have permission. But what if there's a problem? And I said, look, you know, Rosanna, whatever, let's do this. I wrote down on a piece of paper, I, Michele Corradi, take full responsibility for doing it, signed it, gave it to her, and she says, oh, okay, then you can go.
No, that's a huge thing here. Like, this is the one thing that I get very frustrated with in Italy, is that there's the
passing the buck.
Yeah, well, it's not just that, but like the bureaucracy gets passed into so many aspects of life that it's ridiculous.
Well, you know, we were under the Byzantine influence for a long time. So that's Byzantine bureaucracy. And again, you know, I'd like to say this comes from 2 people who adore and love Italy.
Absolutely, that's why we call it home. That's why we call it Italy home. Like we're not.
But no, absolutely. That's an aspect of Italian, the over bureaucratization of certain aspects, which are
every aspect of life.
We're living in a country in which 2021, if you want to, for example, cancel your gas or electric or whatever, you have to send them either a registered letter or a fax. You know, 2021, how do you even send a fax in 2021? And my idea is, why? Well, if you think about it, those 2 forms of communication mean that one single person can't be held accountable for that form of communication. Because if I send an email to Rafael.di Furia, blah, 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 you're responsible because I said I sent an email to you. If I send the fax, it arrives in the office and everybody's like, you know, I'm not the fax person. So. No, accountability. It's a word that doesn't exist in Italian.
No, but even then, like going on using that as an example, when you're doing that, it's not just the one letter or the one fax. You have to give the permission for the permission, and that you agree to give that permission, and that along with that permission, you also can give consent to having your information stored, because if you don't give consent for your information being stored, then they have no way of getting your information out of this.
But I must say, that has improved in recent years. Yeah, nowadays, at least in Emilia Romagna, we always have to. And that's
I don't know. I always feel like it's a big problem, but that's interesting. Your take on it.
Again, you know, and I think, you know, for your listeners, viewers, etc., that's something you really have to think about. Is I want to move to Italy. Where do you want to go to Italy? Because, for example, my wife and I adore Puglia. We want to retire to Puglia. I love it. But if you said tomorrow you're going to go and work and live in Puglia, I don't know.
Yeah, it's difficult.
Yeah, because, for example, where we are in Emilia Romagna, we have this amazing, because going back to why I wouldn't move away, the health service is amazing. I mean, it's unparalleled. You need to do a blood exam. Okay, tomorrow you're in, you're done, you got the exams online. They send you a message, download your clinical file, you have a look, you send it to the doctor sends a meeting. I mean,
no, that's fantastic. I mean, like you see that in some other parts of the country, but maybe not to that extent. Like of how, like you need it, I'm there tomorrow. I mean, like that is something else. I mean, okay, fine. Like I've been very impressed with the Italian healthcare system. There are some times when I've been like, not so happy, but that's more because of an individual who I've dealt with rather than the system as a whole. Or maybe like, I don't know how it is where you are, but like maybe in some parts of the country, you might have to wait a few months if you need something to happen.
It depends on the kind of exam or what you have to do. I mean, even where I am, and there are certain exams which can go, especially if they're not urgent, etc. They can book months ahead. So
interesting. And so, like, I guess also to kind of give an idea of where you live, what are things like there? What is the average kind of day for a person? What are the people like there? I mean, I know generally speaking, maybe not to get too political, but it has a history of being a very left-leaning part of the country. It has a very long history.
Emilia-Romagna, in all of Italian Republican history, has never had a regional right-wing government, ever.
Really?
Never.
Wow.
Some municipalities have had right-leaning governments, not usually right-wing, but maybe, like they in Italy, they have these liste civiche, which are sort of non-aligned political groups sometimes that will win elections. So it's definitely a left-leaning area, maybe a bit like Tuscany, for example. The only other comparable region is Tuscany. And things are pretty good because it's kind of... it's intense. People work a lot of hours, but it's not as bad as Lombardy, for example. Right. So recently I worked with a company who merged the Emilia version of the company, merged with the Lombardy, with the Milan version of the company. And the Emilia people are like, these Milanese are crazy. You can't work that much. Which is something that you go further south, they say about the Emilians, for example. You can't work that much. So there's a very strong work ethic. A little bit closed, not as open and friendly maybe as down south.
I think that's a general northern.
It's a general northern aspect. I think the weather is a bit muggy, a bit foggy. Is not the best, but life's pretty good. Like I said, it's a wealthy area. In all of those, for example, the 2008 economic crisis through to 2011. In our area, there was a lot of job losses, a lot of difficulty. I don't want to downplay it, but you could still see a lot of active social activity, industrial activity going on. So it's a lovely area, but it's not maybe the romantic Italian postcard scene that you would imagine if you want to buy the house in the Tuscan hills. Although we do have part of our province, I'm talking specifically now the province of Reggio Emilia, but you can say that for the province of Modena, Piacenza, Bologna, etc. They all have a part of the Apennines, which is really lovely, because then you can get property at a bit less. You can have a more tranquil lifestyle. You're still only about an hour's drive from the city, because that's another thing, that we can mention culturally between the difference between America and the United States and Italy is, distances. So for us in Italy, I came here today, an hour and a half. People are like, what?
It's traveling across
crazy.
the world.
An hour and a half just for, a record. What are you doing? Right. Whereas in America, be like, that's
going across town.
Yeah, it's going across town. Yeah, or going to the mall,
Yeah.
We used to go to the mall and it was 45 minutes in the car. So
yeah, no, I remember like being a teenager, like there was a brief period where we lived in Boise, Idaho, and to get from where we lived just like kind of on the outskirts of town. It wasn't even the outskirts of town. It's still like pretty well densely populated. To get to downtown, if it was really heavy traffic, easily more than an hour.
Yeah.
Like that's just part of life.
Yeah.
But I guess maybe just kind of getting towards like the idea of if somebody wants to come to live in Italy, because you live here, like this has been your place and you are here with kids. Do you, like, if somebody wanted to maybe move to your region, would you recommend that for a family with kids? Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, because also our area is actually world renowned for young 0 to 6-year-old education. We have actually
the Reggio Emilia,
exactly, the whole Reggio children, which is almost a cult sometimes, in a sense. You either do it their way but at the same time there's a lot of attention and investment to 0 to 6-year-old education, all kinds of different programs and experiences, and so sometimes it's a bit exaggerated because like a kid painting is like, oh yeah, with this he wants to express with this particular stroke his idea that it's just a kid painting, take it easy.
Sometimes a rock is just a rock.
Sometimes a kid banging something with a stick is a kid banging something with a stick. But at the same time, no, I would very highly recommend it. Again, good health service, good school system, transport pretty good, although in Italy public transport has always suffered a little bit. Maybe a bigger city like Bologna, for example, would be an excellent thing. expensive. I mean, it's not the kind of place you could live comfortably on a low salary, and definitely not on a single low salary, for example. But as a family with a decent salary, absolutely. Maybe a place just outside of the city, you know, in the foothills, where you can drive into town when you want to, or escape from the smog of the Po Valley. But no, I would very highly recommend it. Now, I don't know if you've spoken about it in the real estate podcast or the citizenship podcast. The government has made huge investments in this incredible scheme, which is real, you know, and at first when people spoke about it, nobody believed it. The super bonus, the super restructuring bonus. Basically, if you have a house that you want to have restructured, the government, the state will pay you 110% to do certain jobs. So you say, I have a house, I want to redo all the windows and doors, I want to redo the plumbing. The government says, as long as you transform that house's energy category of 2 levels. So for example, you have G, that they're measured in different letters. So if you improve the energy efficiency of that house by 2 levels, we will pay for you to do that. And in theory, it comes out of your, you can deduct it on your taxes. So basically, but also now at the same time to help the banks get a bit more money, as if banks needed more money. But anyway, you can actually sell your credit to the bank who takes on the credit. And so you can say, okay, bank, have my credit that I'm restructuring up to, I think, 97,000 euros.
Wow.
So the bank gives you, instead of giving you the whole sum, they give you a little bit less because they take their cut. And you have like 90,000 euros to restructure your house, clean, and you know, you don't have to pay a penny out of your own pocket, which is excellent. So, you know, if you're thinking of coming to Italy, you buy the house, you get it restructured, but... So I don't want to sow any false hope. That is one of the areas in which the Byzantine bureaucracy is still very, very much present. So if you want to get this super bonus, you have to have piles and piles of paper with all kinds of things. And if even a comma is out of place, they'll ask for all the money back plus double. So you have to be very, very careful. But if you can get the right professionals, accountants, builders, architects, engineers on board, it's worked for so many people, and hopefully it is taking Italy in the right direction in the sense of energy efficiency, because we know that it's not so much the cars that cause smog, but, you know, old buildings, old schools, heating systems, etc. So
wow, that's fascinating. I mean, like, this is always the same thing. I'm gonna quickly say this and then we can go on to the last thing, but like, whenever you're trying to pay taxes in Italy, extremely efficient, very on time, very easy, not that much paperwork to do. You just, bam, it's gone.
Yeah.
But if you're trying to get the tax return, if you're trying to get the bonus, different story completely.
Different story. No, absolutely different story. Yeah, yeah. And then, like, if it could take a couple of years sometimes to my wife got a tax return check the other day from 2019. So.
Oh my gosh! Wow. So okay. So then you love where you live.
I do.
Would you say this is the #1 choice that you would have in Italy, or would there be another choice that you might recommend for a family considering to move to Italy?
Maybe Romania. Because Romania, you're still in the same region. So you still have healthcare, blah, 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 but you're closer to the sea. And so the climate is a little bit better, a bit less smog, a little bit cleaner. Places like, for example, I absolutely adore Ravenna. Ferrara's very nice. Cesena, these kinds of going towards the seaside areas. If you want sort of the balance of all those things, so efficiency, good climate, good style of life, etc. If instead you say, I want a holiday home, south, Puglia, Sicily, you know, a place I want to go and stay, Tuscany, also Tuscany. I mean, if you, either Emilia Romagna or Tuscany, if I'm going to live there permanently. Holiday homes, down south if you want the seaside, Alps if you want or Apennines, you know, the Apennines.
Or even... I can't remember the right in the middle of the country.
Umbria.
Molise.
Molise.
Molise. Yeah. Like you can get like the beach and the mountains like all on the same day.
Yeah, because they're close to the mountains. Gran Sasso, for example, it's not quite Molise, but they have the mountains there. You can also go skiing in the winter there.
Yeah. No, and I was remembering that because I did an interview with another Italian podcaster, Matteo Morelli. He does podcast Praticamente Inglese, where he teaches English. And he was telling me about that in this episode. Anyway, I guess just the one thing that I would love to do before rounding out this episode is maybe tell us a bit about like your podcast and what you do, because I'd love for people to come and check it out.
Yeah,
I think it's
Yeah.
really cool what you do. And the way that, I'm just going to interrupt you here. The way that you are able to paint history and just create this beautiful idea of what happened is absolutely out of this world, I have to say.
Thank you very much. Thank you. That's, when I'm choosing what to talk about, the first thing I do is this boring me? Like, many times I'll be reading a book and I say, oh my God, this is so boring. So that doesn't go into the podcast, which at times, for example, one of the few criticisms which has been mentioned to the podcast is sort of a Rex Gesta. It's just like this guy did this, and I don't go into sort of the economics and just because I think it's boring. So, But anyway, it is a chronological. Well, the main podcast is a chronological history of the Italian peninsula from the fall of the Western Roman Empire in 476 to the current day. And at the moment, I'm on episode 118, and we're around the end of the 14th century. So the really, really good part, with the Renaissance and the Machiavellis and the Borgias is just about around the corner. The Medici are about to appear.
I love that part of Italian history.
Well, generally people have this idea of, indeed, if I ever wrote a book, the title would be Middle-aged Italy, how stuff actually happened between the fall of the Western Roman Empire and the Renaissance. So stuff did happen there, and it's very interesting stuff as well. So anyway, we're around there, and then I also have this year I started up a section on fascism, which I think is very important in this period to start to learn some of the lessons we can learn from fascism. And occasionally for certain days and commemorations, I'll put in a special episode like 2nd of June or the 25th of April, etc. But the main thing is a chronological history from the fall of the Western Roman Empire to wherever I get to, so the current day. So.
Well, man, thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Rafael. It's been a great pleasure. Thank you so much.
Absolutely, it's been so fantastic. Those episodes, of course, you have to check out the episodes that we recorded of the Italian Citizenship podcast. Probably by the time this video comes out, at least one of them will be out. Marco and I spoke just before recording this video. He was like completely blown away, as was I. We had such a good time. So really, thank you so much for coming out here.
Thank you very much for having me.
And I look forward to having you back on this project as well.
Absolutely.
I mean, we got to figure something out.
Yeah. Maybe up in the Apennines with a good bottle of something.
I see a future. I see the future. Anyway, thank you all so much for coming and checking out this episode. And also a huge thank you to the Patreon supporters who make content like this possible on a monthly basis. And of course, thank you for those of you who are also subscribed and like the video on YouTube. Also, make sure that you are subscribed to the audio only podcast, where you can also find this available. Anyway, stay safe and healthy out there. I'm Rafael di Furia, and we have been here with Mike Corradi from A History of Italy podcast.
A History of
History of Italy podcast. And I'll see you all next time.
Thank you.
Later.